Welcome, I'm Carrie Tang. It's great to have you here today. We will be discussing Western civilization, distinguishing liberty and freedom. Freedom and liberty are imperative to Western civilization. Freedom is the ability to do as one wills. Examples of freedom are freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of the press, freedom to assemble, and freedom to petition. These are found in the Bill of Rights. Freedom is considered to be a God-given and inalienable. It is something that is not given by the government. It is something you are born with and cannot be taken away. In contrast, liberty is unobstructed action according to our will. Jefferson felt liberty was needed in order to have freedom. Jefferson once said, "Rightful liberty is unobstructed action according to our will, within the limits drawn around us by the equal rights of others. I do not add within the limits of law, because law is often but the tyrant's will, and always so when it violates the rights of an individual." Without freedom of thought, there can be no such thing as wisdom, and no such thing as public liberty without freedom of speech, which is the right of every man, as far as by it he does not hurt and control the right of another, and this is the only check which it ought to suffer, the only bounds which it ought to know. This sacred privilege is so essential to free government that the security of property and the freedom of speech always will go together, and in those wretched countries where a man cannot call his tongue his own, he can scarce call anything else his own. Whoever would overthrow the liberty of the nation must begin by subduing the freedom of speech, a thing terrible to public traitors. Thomas Gordon and John Trenchard wrote Cato's Letters in the early 1720s. It was originally published in 144 weekly essays in the London Journal. It was later on compiled into a 4-volume set. They used the pen name Cato after the Roman statesman who went against Julius Caesar. The focus was on freedom and liberty, and it was extremely influential. It showed how freedom and liberty went hand in hand, and it was essential to have a free society in a free government. They focused heavily on the freedom of speech. There was a strong focus on freedom, that it must be used wisely and just to not inflict harm upon others. Thomas Jefferson once said, "Our liberty depends on the freedom of the press, and that cannot be limited without being lost." Here's another example of how Jefferson shows that liberty and freedom are intertwined and cannot be separated. One thing that John and Thomas in Cato's letters pointed out was, "A power to do good can never become warrant for doing evil." This shows the importance of freedom and liberty not being used to inflict harm upon others or doing harm towards others. A lot of people don't understand how Western civilization could be founded upon liberty and freedom and yet still have something as horrible and atrocious as slavery. Thomas Jefferson once said, "Bigotry is the disease of ignorance, of morbid minds, enthusiasm of the free and buoyant. Education and free discussion are the antidotes of both." On a closing note about Western civilization, the men that valued freedom and liberty were products of their time. Man is not perfect and is a continuing quest to improve. I agree with Jefferson that education is part of the key to opening hearts and changing minds while still hanging on to freedom and liberty. Thank you for joining me. I'm Carrie Tang. Have a great evening.